Greetings, as I, Dracovin, Lord and Emperor here at the Dracovin Empire. Welcome, of course, once again to talking about some tabletop. We're talking about Shadowrun today. Joining me live on Twitch. Hi, Twitch. Yeah, as always, I always enjoy your company, people here. And if you're joining me on YouTube later on, hi, YouTube. I hope you also enjoy it. Remember, for both sides, give support, the follow on Twitch, the subscription, ring the bell, liking the video on YouTube. And my question for either case is, have you had any adventures in Shadowrun in Denver? That's my question for today. I personally have never. Granted, I usually am the one running Shadowrun in all the games I've been in, but yeah, I've never had an adventure in Denver. So, it was interesting to chat about today. But, yeah, so let's, why don't we dive into it and get started talking about Denver? Because, honestly, there's no reason not to. So, for Denver, we do have to talk about some books that I can recommend you checking out. So the main two books that I'm referencing, I did use the Shadowrun Wikipedia as a reference source, but most of what I'm referencing today will be from Shadows of North America. Shadows of North America, it's still early editions of Shadowrun, so it still has issues with the way it displays information that the wiki site does help to navigate a little bit. But I enjoyed this one particularly well because it does give a very good breakdown a lot of the political players that are going on, at least in the 2060s. So it's about 20 years timeline if you're using 5th, 6th edition after here, but still has some great sources of information. The other one is an older book than that. It's Denver, City of Shadows. I did reference this book. I'm not using it as much, again, because a lot of information is out of date now. This, I believe, is pre-Ghostwalker coming in, the Great Dragon, so that's why there's some, issues with the way that information is said there. But, again, if you're looking into places that could be there and things like that, there is a lot of information that I'd recommend. Some other books that do provide some information, but not as much, of course, is Spy Games. It's Adventures, one of them set in Denver. Similar speaking, Stormfront. Both of these have kind of setting, adventure kind of stuff, and introduce us to things from Denver. And a couple ones that talk about a couple things from Denver is Target Smuggler's Haven, because of smuggling into Denver, and of course, related to Denver and kind of things like with Ghostwalker individuals is Dunkelzane's Secrets, Varial and the Dragon. So those are all the books I recommend if you want to do more research on Denver beyond what I'm going to be talking about today. But definitely those first two are the ones I recommend the most. And we'll show off Denver's flag here. Good old Denver. So, Denver, or it's also known as the Front Range Free Zone, is technically a sovereign state. It is also, at this point in time, the domain of the Great Dragon Ghostwalker. I'll talk about the history of it, but Ghostwalker basically came in and conquered the place. There are two groups that are the government of Denver, Ghostwalker itself, and the Council of Denver. There are a lot of major political players that still have a say in what is happening in Denver. And even though Ghostwalker is technically in charge, it's sort of the day-to-day is done by these individual members. Ghostwalker is a reasonable, basically, conqueror. That's the best way to think about it. Came in, kind of took over, and then each of the various sectors by nationality determines a lot of things. That there are these separate sectors that work mostly independently of each other, but sort of together, and that's where the council comes in here. It's another reason that things like the Denver, the City of Shadows book doesn't work as much, because the Aslant sector is technically gone. So keep that in mind. And some of the other sectors don't exist the same way anymore because of changes in power. That happened. So, yes. So, yeah. There has been, at least according to the 2060s, when we can look into it, there was improvements in Denver because of Ghostwalker coming in charge. Effectively, the battling between the different sectors and those governments that were influenced by those sectors was minimized to a great degree because there's an overwhelming power above all of them. It's this kind of idea that before Ghostwalker, the way that Denver worked is that all the members of the treaty cities, the various Native American nations, things like Aslan, the CAS, UCAS, all had their own stakes in the way things were working, kind of worked together, but argued all the time. Not as much was done, because even though this city is its own city, it's a bunch of different nationalities arguing for strength. With the Ghost Walker in charge, it kind of makes it sort of like, hey guys, stop goddamn arguing. And they're like, okay. So things get done. And things have improved. I can talk about the members of the Council of Denver from the 2060s, but probably not better to do that. Some statistics to keep in mind for the city is it has some great dock wagon coverage. Union's the main one, but each sector has different things. English is the majority spoken language. There's about 36% corporate affiliation, 30% below poverty, but 15% estimated sinless. It is about 60% human, 13% elf, 5% dwarf, 19% orc, and then 1% of troll, and 1% of other. So keep all that in mind now for basic information about Denver. We'll move on from the Denver flag to this cityscape, which may or may not be Denver, but I thought a bit of cityscape would be appropriate here. We'll talk about history. Well, we'll talk about like geography and history of the area. I think geography and history kind of throw together here. So, the Denver Metroplex consists of Boulder to the north, down to Colorado Springs in the south. So it's a big metroplex. You have to kind of remember when we talk about Seattle, the metroplexes, these massive kind of city areas that they can kind of control, are much larger than they used to. There are 4 areas that exist now. Originally, the city was divided into 5. And it still is divided into 5. It was, in the original treaty, USA, and then 4 members of the Native American nations. Aslan, Pueblos, Sioux, and Ute. The area and its surrounding territory is known as the Front Range Free Zone, and is technically a sovereign state under the Council. So this is the important things about here. It is a sovereign state. Technically. But each of 5 countries has their stake in it. The UCAS sector got split between the UCAS and the CAS when they succeeded, and Ghost Walker returned in 2061, destroys the Aslan sector, removed its survivors. Ute was absorbed into Pueblo. So, we don't have Aslan anymore. The Ute have joined in the Pueblo. I talked about that in my North American ones. But, alright, let's dive into the history a little bit more. It all comes from the, sovereign, the Sovereign American Indian movement. We have, of course, that beginning in 2002, and that led to a lot of the issues with coming with the Great Ghost Dance. I've talked about the history of the Sixth World, and all comes to a head. Denver's a city there, of course, with the Treaty of Denver. It was 3 months of negotiations, and our United States, Canada, Aslan, and Native American nations signed this treaty. It gave the Native American nations their control, it split them up, it divided Denver into those sectors then. Big things that happened are, of course, in 2037, the Denver Data Haven goes online. In 2038, a large blizzard hits it. And the next thing that we know about is, of course, Ghostwalker. Ghostwalker emerged from the Watergate Rift in Washington Federal District, FTC. That same day, he finds his body and begins an attack on Denver. So, Ghostwalker was a spiritual being, finds his body, attacks Denver, focuses on Aslan, destroying the Aslan tactically. And then this is December 24th of 2061. January 27th, 2062, takes control of it and bans Aslan from the city. The districts there are given to the CAS. Because the CAS has kind of been sharing with the UCAS, but now they've got their own district kind of thing. The Council of Denver is left to govern, once again, the everyday affairs of Denver. There's ground broken for a Temple of the Dragon there. In 2072, the Winter Olympics are held there. Aslan athletes are prohibited from entering the city. In fall of 2074, there's a conflict between Ghostwalker and, of course, the immortal elf Harlequin. It came to a head and plunged Denver into a civil war-like state with several underground groups fighting, regular terrorist attacks. As technology used this opportunity to take control of parts of the city in the name of Aslan again. So they're kind of there, but not there, but that's kind of where we leave off. The book I'm going to be using mainly is not going to have a lot of that. Okay. That's kind of our history of the city. There's a kind of map of the city. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Now, we get into some complexities of who's there, who controls what, who's members of the council in their different sectors. We'll talk about politics as a whole and then break down into the different political units. When I break down into the different political units, I'm going to be going by the 2060s, around the 2062, 2063 region, just because, again, we have information on what's happened in Denver post the 2060s, but we haven't had a major book on it since the Shadows of North America, which gave us a lot of information on the politics of it post the Denver book. So there aren't a lot of newer books that go into depths about Denver. The city is controlled chaos. That's kind of what it's referred to as, because there are effectively 6 political sectors that coexist if they don't have a choice in a way. That's the kind of way you have to think about it. You know, there are 6 major groups there. And of course, this is not including Ghostwalker, who has had blood feud against, Harlequin. Or Harlequin's blood feud against that one. So, yeah. And, But, yes, there were 2 countries, the UCAS, CAS, Aslan, the 3 Native American nations, a dragon. Now there's technically one of those ones was absorbed by the other, and Aslan has kind of gone underground, so there's now kind of 4 vying political powers plus the support. It's a mess. It's a mess of political things there. And each sector has kind of some of their own basic laws and economics that have conflicts that make legal trade between them virtually non-existent. Because remember, a lot of these sectors go to their home country's laws. The sovereign state of it and the council of it don't matter at that point in time. So, shadow economy, basically the underground economy, sustains the city in a lot of ways. Black and gray markets are incredibly important, because if not, food would be incredibly expensive, necessities for life would be incredibly expensive. It's effectively the underground has supported the city for so long. The residents, basically, they ignore the borders between sectors as most as they can. Products and people cross the borders daily. Governments try to track the things that are happening, but Denver is effectively a free-for-all. A Wild West, a lot of powerful people there, a dangerous place, a great place for Shadowrunners. And yes, we have lost 2 of the sectors, sort of gained a shadow version of one, and then also gained a dragon. So, yeah. So let's talk, Ghostwalker is, of course, the most important thing here, technically. In charge. The big one. There's a liaison officer that any official business, any business with the outside world, goes into there. It's located in the Seuss sector hub. And just a skip from the council hall. The newer one established after he took charge. Any council business, petitioners, anything of like, it's like a dragon embassy that exists there. And it's pro-Aslanters keep their way from that. Nicholas Whitebird is the dragon's mouthpiece. Basically, translator, direct liaison, the one that talks with it. So, Whitebird's a very important kind of person here, rarely seen outside Council Hall. But when he does, He doesn't take a security detail. His own strength and the fact that he's backed up by a dragon means that, most of the time people are not dumb enough to go after it. Doesn't mean half people haven't tried to go after Whitebird to influence Ghostwalker. It doesn't end well for them. Let's talk about the administration branch. This is the council, sort of. The council calls the shots, but there's a lot of bureaucracy. And the administration branch wields immediate authority of the citizens. There's been a lot of downsizing from about 10,000 to just under 6 since Ghostwalker took over, basically cutting a lot of the fat in the branch. And the services that keep the city, budget, sanitation, income tax is an exception. Basically, all services are provided by outside resources most of the time. Dockwagon handles emergency medical and healthcare. BIF Incorporated is sanitation. Power is handled by Pueblo's nuclear fission power plant in Greenland. And Front Range Transit International operates the magnet. So Pueblo Corporate Council holds a contract for the Matrix Grid in Denver, too. So that's important to know. So there's a lot of outsourcing to things there. Also, since Ghostwalker took over, there is the Zone Defense Force. It's a standing military in case of outside attack. It's composed of units lent from the 5 nations of the Council at the time of this point in time. Units are rotated to serve 1-year stints of duty there. The force's command structure is also on loan, though on a more permanent basis after passing Ghostwalker's approval process. So Ghostwalker approves you, and basically then you can be part of the command structure there, and it's a little more on permanent. They also have some policing duties. They guard the administration duty, the council offices, oversee any multi-sector investigations or disputes, and are tasked with smuggling interdictions. Basically, there's a smuggling problem, they come in there. They're stationed at each of the major airports, on top of bases that are established to them at Fort Carlson, the old Rocky Mountain Arsenal, and, yeah. So that's a major political power here. There are a bunch of airports. There is Stapleton, Denver International, and Lowry are 3 major ones. There's a bunch of smaller ones. There's a scenic route to get into the city, Highway 87. Became Intercity 25 inside the free zone. Sector borders do exist there. You've used Maglev Trader, refurbished subway services. You get around that way most of the time. The sector borders mostly cut off roads between them is the thing. So there are ways to get around, just you do it with more public transportation. And there are customs, border securities in each sector. Normally, borders are only allowed in certain checkpoints, with vehicles allowed to pass at those. Body scans, ID checks, make sure you cover city, and whatever kind of reason you're coming through, that kind of thing. But I mean, like, just walk between them most of the time. But Ghostwalker has cracked down on a lot of smuggling there from outside. And we're not talking about those small-time smuggling which keeps the city afloat. We're talking about large-time smuggling. Because remember, this is a bunch of nations meeting together. So it's a great point in time to basically kind of move things in and out. Yes, the entire thing is kind of surrounded by the Pueblo Corporate Council and the Ute and Sioux. Denver's kind of in the middle of those. But there are sectors for the UCAS, the CAS, these connecting sectors. That means smuggling between those 2 nations, or using kind of travel in UCS or CAS. No. And border security differs for each sector, too. So, some of them are better than others. Again, it's the problem with kind of like smuggling, crime here. It's an issue in Denver. CAS, let's talk about that. They've had the most changes. They have a lot of former Aslant citizens and businesses to integrate. But they've also got their own political problems that happen back in the CAS that have trickle-down effects here. So definitely absorbing that there has changed things too. But, having a little bit more space and being able to spread out and have a little bit more control, both good and bad in this case. The CAS does still have, even with all the uphills and, problems, they do have economy in their sector on the upswing, and they pride themselves in consumer confidence. And that's what market wages say, even here, too. A lot of companies looking for growth opportunities are turning towards, in the city here, to the CAS sector. And taking over a lot of the former As Technology buildings, that's a good choice for a lot of corporate buildings to move into. Luxing has moved in. Sader Krupp has looking in to move in. So this is 2060s, mid-2060s too. So keep that in mind. With the battle between Harlequin and Ghostwalker, there has been some upheaval though too. And Knight Errant provides security to their sector, with the CAS military assisting them now and then, and of course the Free Zone military there too. And Knight Errant has been basically hiring more personnel in the area. Let's talk about Los Espelhos. I'm probably butchering that a little bit. Because all the Aslan personnel, they couldn't get rid of all the citizens, but they got rid of all the people in charge, a lot of that things, the As Technology employers, and a lot of that stuff. But a few nationalists and As Technology employers haven't been deported. They're still there. And basically they're a new resistance column to what's going on here. And this is the group dubbed Los Espelhos, building its strength here. Basically dissident group. And you have to consider that this is the group that probably took over some areas during the Harlequin Ghostwalker battle, but their maintained control, I can't say. They're getting towards the 20 minutes. That's a hard thing to say. But again, that's a thing in the CAS controlled area, which was a tiny bit given by the UCAS, and then this big area here that they can finally feel like they're an equal member of the pie, even though there's really only like 5 people that have control at this point in time, So, with the Ut being absorbed by Pueblo. Anyway, alright. Let's talk about the Pueblo sector a little bit there. It's the most corporate, and it's most efficient in the Denver Sprawl. Because remember, Pueblo is corporate. They went heavy corporate in their way of doing things. I've talked about it, the Pueblo Corporate Council. And they mirror their home there a lot. So they are kind of well situated there. They've always been well built there. Work very efficiently in a very corporate way. They have important contracts like the Matrix contracts, so they are in a very good position within the council too, and a very supportive one, definitely. A lot of business here focus on Matrix in the business that they have. The two biggest ones that are contracting some space under them are, of course, Renraku and their Hypersense Novatech's simple software. Both of them do keep a low profile in the area. They don't flex their corporate control, corporate play there. And the thing is, they don't want to alienate the Pueblo population, who are kind of connected with their own corporate kind of thing. So both of these companies are basically on good terms with Pueblo within Denver, and making sure any kind of audits or connections with them go smoothly. Alright. Then, of course, there's the Seuss sector. Stand your ground. This is something that you can tell newcomers there. They've got ultra aggro warriors, and, basically, they've got something to prove almost. 'em. 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 And tribal affiliation doesn't save you there, too. So keep it in mind there that it's a area that's a little different in the way they do things. They're definitely a connection to the Sooth sector, and they're, there's a little bit of that tribalism there, too. And people might be a little bit more aggressive. But if you stand your ground, you can get some respect there. So the Sooth sector is the hub. The strangest part about it. The hub is a non-continuous part of the Sooth and UCAS sectors covering a big chunk of the downtown area. It's an island completely surrounded by the CAS sector and split between the UCAS and Sooth. Basically, the council didn't want to leave downtown Denver solely in Aslant's hands, so they made these boundary drawings. So the hub is the strangest part about this sector. Definitely. The Sooth hub is home to, of course, the liaison options, the Warp Drive Pyramid, previously known as the FTL Pyramid, is there too. And, yeah. So, there's some interesting things about the Sooth sector. It's also got Shiwase Plaza, and offices for both the Corp's Envirotech and Biotech divisions. This sector is focused on agriculture, the Sooth sector. And applications of genetic engineering. Arbortech has particularly strong presence here. So, yeah. The UCS sector. Talk about that a little bit then. It's like a frontier town also here. Because, again, you have to consider that the Sooth sector is next to Sooth, the Sooth Nation. The Pueblo sector, which was both the Pueblo and Ute at one point in time, both were connected to those respective nations. Aslant, near Aslant. So, well, Aslant was, I think, a little out there. But, nonetheless, UCAS, and eventually the CAS, are kind of like areas in on their own where you would fly to get into them. Yeah. So, living in there is no dream. Prices are steep. And the government isn't in an anomaly of democracy here. They're less of a colony. And ever since Ghostwalker kind of grabbed the reins, definitely. The UCS doesn't want strange relationships with Ghostwalker. So basically they make sure the new commissioner that they put in charge at that time is treated nice. Like, Seattle's at least a colony. The Denver sector really isn't treated very well. There's a Draco Foundation office here, though, that helps connect things with the Memorial of Dunkel Zane and stuff like that, and they have a kind of strange relationship with Ghostwalker. So that's kind of an interesting thing here. And the Draco Foundation isn't the only corp in the UCAS sector. Just down from the new council halls, Mitsuhama Tower. And there's a couple other smaller groups there, too. Also, the Yamatsu Garden Complex in Tremont is there, too. So, yeah. There's definitely some corporate presence there, too. But UCS is just in this weird position there. There is moon colonies, and there was an attempted Mars colony that things happened to. I did talk about it at the end of my rest of video. There isn't a lot of information on the colonies that are outside in space, though, unfortunately. There's also some, actual, space station colony kind of things, too. I'd have to get into it. Maybe doing a separate video where we kind of dive into it again. But again, there's just not a lot of information on the space-based stuff for Shadowrun, unfortunately. But yeah, the Mars base is in entire storage. But I think I might have handled it in my one video. I didn't say check it out if you want to look into it. I just remember. Again, just not a lot of information. So, even though it technically doesn't exist per se anymore, we can talk about what the Ute sector a little bit here. it's because the people there are, still there, even though they're technically Pueblo now, as they were eaten up on it. They do have the people in that area definitely would retain the chip on their shoulder that they did, during this time period, disliking a lot of Anglos and stuff like that, and they're connected with Boulder's original mining town there, so. The Ute sector is one that can remember that a little bit there. But those, but now it's part of Pueblo, so. That's basically who's in charge of this place and time. Again, this is focusing a lot on the 2060s. There's another sector map there, kind of getting an idea about it. There's a few more things to talk about, though, before we finish up talking about Denver today. We can talk about sports, economy, crime, and stuff like that a little bit, and kind of a couple other little details that I can pick up from the old Denver City of Shadows book. Because there are some information I can kind of talk about in here with their crime kind of thing. Just a little bit here. Most of the stuff in that book focuses on the sector. So again, if you want to look into more details about locations that were in the sectors, probably 2050s or so, I'd recommend the City of Shadows book. That's at least if you're going into actually having like a adventure in one of these sectors. That might be a good one. We could talk economics. Excuse me. So, let's start with sports, because sports are always fun to talk about. It has some teams. It's a religion in Denver. The Mile High Stadium fell in the hands of the Ute sector. NFL is still considered All-American. They built the Bronkomia Stadium that was built in 2025. Housed the Nuggets. So the Nuggets for basketball, Broncos for football, and Thunderheads for Urban Brawl are still local sports teams. But there is a little bit of probably shuffling around at, because Denver is its own thing technically. They're now connected with that. And, it's technically also part of 4 nations. Again, and there are a lot of major groups there. Pueblo Corporate, if you're looking for who the big corporate influences are, and you're really going to say that, Seder Krupp and the Pueblo Corporate Council are 2. There's a lot of corporate presence versus a lot of smaller ones, but those 2 are the big ones. And then Warp Drive Systems have a big chunk there. Warp Drive Systems is one of those ones that, if you want to look into it, corporate download, Portfolio of the Dragon, talks about Warp Drive Systems a little bit more. You're looking at it. So, who's in the underworld we can talk about a little bit? Well, of course, the Mafia has influence in Denver with the Cosquillo family in the UCS Sever and the Chavez family originating from DFW in the CAS sector. The Koshinari dominate the underworld in the Pueblo structure. There's also at least 2 triads and 2 different kumi of the Yakuza in the city. The 5 rivaling Vori groups follow the Evo Corporation of Denver, but none of these control more than a small slice of the underworld. And in 2073, one of them did cease to exist. So, there are a large group of people. The Vori being a organized crime originally from the Soviet Union, so Russian mob kind of thing, and the Koshari is just crime syndicates based out of the Pueblo Corporate Council. So more different mafia groups control the underworld there too. But it influences the zone of gravity, so it's mafia, yakuza, different gangs and stuff like that. Stuff like the triads having a pretty big influence. Again, that also leads to you as a Shadowrunner if you're in Denver, meaning there's a lot of people on both, a lot of heads and a lot of hands in the pocket that might give you a, job. And again, we've already talked about it, smuggling is the big thing here for it. Most jobs are probably going to be related to the smuggling in the various markets. But yeah, that's Denver in a nutshell. There really could be a little bit more to chat about, but again, that would be going into depths and a lot of stuff on the things from some of those books there. That I went over most of what was in the Shadows of North America. That was a good place to go. There's a little bit more details there. If you want to check it out yourself, I definitely recommend it for a few more details, especially some places you can check out. But I try to give a best summary of all that stuff. It's sometimes not easy. And again, like, me trying to talk about it and having, like, thought patterns, too, is... Unfortunately, those books are hard to use. Fuck, man. It's one of those things that I really feel like it was an interesting concept back in the early 2000s, or, you know, late 90s, early 2000s, is having books that have a lot of flavor text intermixed with your actual information. It ain't great. It was an interesting idea. It was never good in execution, and those older books do it a lot in Shadowrun. So, be warned, especially third edition. Third edition was notoriously bad. But yeah, it's just trying to like get the information out while you're like. But hopefully you learned a little bit about Denver because of that. You know, we've dived into it, and it's this interesting place that it's another reason is technically a major place for Shadowrunning games. Though we don't talk about it as much anymore, it is a smuggler's paradise, a Shadowrunner's paradise in a way, a great place to have a lot of crazy things happening. And yeah, I mark it very close to Seattle and a place that you maybe just want to use because, one, there's a lot of information on it, and two, it's a great place to tell stories. Both are cities in the middle of other places. There are places that are countries onto their own, places that have to fight on themselves. Now, granted, Seattle doesn't have the same kind of mass amounts of influence and countries that have control over it, unlike, let's say, Denver that has, 5 nations, technically 6 groups, kind of vying for power nowadays. Kind of was 7 at a little bit of play time, but not anymore. But still, yeah, that's Denver. Is it a great place to live? Maybe it depends on your sector. Some sectors are better than others. Certainly prices are probably not going to be great, but it's the essence of a super melting pot where there's this control over borders, but not because, you know, you're driving a car, or a truck, you're taking a train, or a maglev. Yeah, you're crossing borders legally. You can just walk across. No one's going to stop you. There might be some walls here and there, maybe. And not all the place. It's an interesting location to kind of check out. I like Denver as a concept from a distance. And of course, having a dragon in charge, fighting an immortal elf that's super powerful mage just isn't, you know, a storyline for in and of itself. Probably like rank 12 mage who has like 18 magic versus a giant ghost ancient dragon in a battle for the ages. That's Coastwalker versus Harlequin. I might have to do an episode on Harlequin all in itself. You know, that'd be interesting. I think I did say I was going to do one Immortal Elves at some point in time. Yeah, Harlequin and the Immortal Elves. Oh, that would be fun. Definitely one point in time. Maybe explain a little bit more of the beef against dragons. Anyway, for now, I remember all those various things, the following, subscribing, all that stuff I said at the beginning. I have social media, Discord, Twitter. Make sure to check them out. They're linked below in both Twitch and YouTube. And yeah, I'll just give a shout out to my schedule and then we'll go. If you want to see tabletop stuff, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, early afternoon, Saturdays, late morning. Crimson Queen, a live play of Pathfinder 1st Edition at Wednesdays at 9 p.m. PST. Check that out. And of course, discussing tabletop Saturdays at 6. We will talk about tabletop news of the week and deeper discussion topics and more. And maybe we'll broach space again. Maybe broaching space again in Shadowrun wouldn't be a bad thing. So maybe I'll add that to the list. Space? Question mark. It might not, and it might be a bad thing to just talk about it again and maybe go in a little bit more details. For now, I think that's good. I kept my shout-out short. I hope you enjoyed learning about Denver. I'm going to say to all of you out there, farewell.